You can take your notes, go ahead.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's extraordinary meeting. I would like to begin the meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land on which we meet tonight, and I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, both past, present and emerging. Declarations of webcasting. I inform all those in attendance at this meeting that the meeting is being webcast and that those in attendance should refrain from making any defamatory statements concerning any person, council or employee, and refrain from discussing those matters subject to closed council proceedings as indicated in clause 14.1 of the Code of Meeting Practice. I note that there are a number of people in the gallery tonight for this evening's meeting. We are today a council that conducts its meeting and comes to policy positions in a constructive, effective and orderly way. We are pleased to display this to the public when they attend meetings or view them on the video broadcast. Those of you who have not made arrangements to address council tonight, your attendance is limited to viewing proceedings outlined in the business paper. I ask you for your cooperation to respect this. All councillors are present tonight, thank you. No apologies. Declarations of interest this evening. Anyone with declarations of interest? Any person registered to speak during the public forum on matters including in the business paper and registered via the council website prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting will have the opportunity to speak. There will only be 2 speakers for and against on each matter on the business paper. Public forum will be allocated half an hour time in total, with each speaker having 3 minutes to speak. Speakers not registered for public forum will have an opportunity to speak on matters on the business paper only if time permits.
That's the order. People speaking.
On tonight's agenda for the people speaking at the extraordinary council meeting of the 1st of August, the first person to speak would be Mr. Rob White. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor Statham, can I ask a question?
Yes,
At the last meeting, you extended the 2 speakers for and 2 speakers against. Has that been taken away?
No, I announced before the last meeting at the same time of the meeting that is what is in the policy. However, we were fair and we will be fair again tonight. Thank you for that. Mr. White, thank you.
At the last meeting, we discussed DA 070/22 and we identified that really what this is a single link in a chain of events that may eventually result in Lake Lyell Pumped Hydro progressing forward. Council, for whatever reasons, chose to vote in favour of that, 5-4. Tonight it's still that same link that we can change if we wish to, albeit different result maybe. By accepting the first stage of this proposal, effectively this council is giving a green light to a proposal that will ultimately destroy an iconic mountain, a major tourist attraction, and negatively impact the lives of many who reside in the proximity of the area. And all of this for the only identifiable advantage is 15 jobs. The concept of voting this proposal based on the fear that the proponent may go to the Land and Environment Court is just a ridiculous way to do it. If we were worried about this, any controversial subject will not be voted against. And if that be the case, we don't need councillors, we just need a good administrator. The primary objective of any council is to do what the community requires, wants and needs, irrespective of the outcome. A councillor indicated to me earlier on that we need as many pumped hydro schemes as possible, and because Energy Australia owns the land and access to power lines, this makes it an ideal proposal. To me, this demonstrates a lack of understanding of what's actually required. I'm going to quote Professor Andrew Blakers. Professor Andrew Blakers is the Director of the Australian National University Centre for Sustainable Energy, which employs 60 staff. His area of expertise is renewable power and energy systems, and his area of specific interest is pumped hydro, and he's globally recognised as an expert on this matter. Professor Blakers has indicated that in New South Wales we need 3 to 4 good pumped hydro options. Not 40, not 100, not 50, 3 to 4. The Australian National University has identified and ranked over 2,000 potential sites in New South Wales to fulfil these needs. Professor Blakers is very forthcoming in pointing out that with 2,000 preferred possibilities and needing to only select 3 or 4, the Australian community can be very selective in choosing the best options. And I will quote Professor Blakers' comments on Lake Lyell pumped hydro. Quote, "We did a Bluefield survey of all Australian sites existing near existing reservoirs, and unfortunately this site, Lake Lyell, does not even show up on the preferred Bluefield sites, although another site nearby did show up, but it was classed as a Class D. This site is definitely not preferred because there are dozens of Class A and B sites in and around Lithgow and Bathurst. So you would not bother with this, you would just go to a better site." So basically, simply owning the land is obviously not a key criteria in the selection process. The criteria that make for good pumped hydro systems would include items such as a head of water with a minimum height of 500 metres for efficient power generation, pointing out that Snowy Hydro 2, it's closer to 900 metres. If you take the top of Lake Lyell water level and the midpoint of the Mount Walker Ridge, then the height of that would be 260 metres, which is less than half the minimum requirement stated by Andrew Blakers. Point 2, an earth and rock-filled reservoir is in preference to a concrete-filled reservoir. Energy Australia is proposing a concrete-filled reservoir on Mount Walker. Point 3, minimal impact on environment and local communities. Well, I don't know if I can say too much there. There's plenty of impact on local communities in this thing, so that one's not achieved. 4, the choice of projects that deliver the best outcomes for broader society and renewable energy outcomes. On this basis, you select Class A sites, not one that is not even on the radar. I personally do not understand why our councillors are not looking after the community and considering all of the points that we're putting forward. I realise that everyone will probably vote the same way that they did last time, but to me, you haven't even listened. We offered to everyone to come and listen to what we had to say, and to be fair, some came and some offered us brief amounts of time, and some of you didn't even respond to the emails. On this basis, I'd like to see you vote against this proposal once and for all.
Thank you, Mr. White. We'll have Mr. Henry Heron now, thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak again, having spoken on Monday last. When I left the meeting last week, I couldn't get out of my mind a question that was bothering me very much. The question was, what on earth could persuade council to support this project? What possible reason could there be for supporting it? Now, in trying to answer that question, let's look quickly again at what this project will involve for the city of Lithgow, its citizens, and the environment of the city. Energy Australia tells us that the lake will become, that is Lake Lyell, will become a tidal lake. That is Energy Australia's words. Energy Australia also tells us that every single day the level of that tidal lake will drop by 2 metres vertically. Now we know that when you extrapolate that 2 metre vertical drop horizontally, you will get up to 10 metres of mud flats. And so, as I said last week, the campers at the lake will go to bed at night with the water lapping up to their tents, and they will wake up in the morning and they will be facing 10 metres of mud flats. Mud flats which are extremely dangerous for young kids and extremely unsightly. The other thing that is going to impact on the community, of course, apart from the impact on Lake Lyell, is Mount Walker. There's been so much said about Mount Walker, it's hardly necessary for me to repeat it. It's sufficient to say that this project will destroy the beauty of this wonderful mountain, which is one of the great sites of the Lithgow area. And I need say no more than that. But it will destroy it forever. Forever. Now, the question then is, what possible reasons could there be for approving this project? Well, let's look at climate change, the fight against climate change, and the use of pumped hydro. And I need say no more than what we've just heard from Rob White. Lake Lyell doesn't even feature in the 2,000 sites selected by the ANU as suitable for pumped hydro in New South Wales. But just think about that for a moment. Lake Lyell is such an undesirable location relative to all of the other locations that it doesn't even make the 2,000 selected sites. So that can't be a reason for supporting this project. What could it be? 15 jobs it's going to create. 15 jobs. The cost of those 15 jobs is the destruction of Mount Walker, and in my submission will ultimately be the destruction of Lake Lyell, because I can't see Lake Lyell surviving this project. Once it becomes a tidal lake, with its level dropping vertically 2 metres every day, and mud flats of 10 metres extending out from the campsites, it will become so dangerous that it will not be able to survive. We're going to lose the lake. So I've run out of reasons for support for this. There's only one left, of course, and that is that the wholly owned subsidiary of China Light and Power, which is Energy Australia, is going to make a massive profit out of this project. I have spoken to people in the area who have done some research into the profitability, and Energy Australia might tonight tell us what they think they're going to be earning from it. But from our calculations, based on the cost of taking the power up at a very low amount, maybe $50 per megawatt, and the profitability from dropping the water down at areas of peak price, maybe 150, the calculations had the Energy Australia earning $26,800 per hour, or $200,000 a day, or $78 million a year. Now those numbers may be wrong. They probably are. They're probably not absolutely correct. But we can all be sure that Energy Australia will be earning massive profits out of this project at the great cost of the citizens of Lithgow. And I implore councillors to think again of the people that they represent, to think again of the community that they represent, and not be put off by rejecting this DA out of a fear that there'll be an appeal to the Land and Environment Court. Because There will be times when this council will refuse DAs, and they will be faced with appeals to the Land and Environment Court, and they will stump up and they will honour their citizens and their obligations and fight the case as is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Heron. Mr Ray Smith, thank you.
Thank you. My address basically is the same as I spoke about last Monday night, in concerns with the deficiencies as stated with the DA. Now, I read the business paper tonight and I see that it's basically a whitewash on just about every issue as far as the Aboriginal heritage, the flora and fauna, and others where it says there was reputable and qualified people done these things. Well, I don't think that's good enough. I think there should be names put to this, there should be qualifications put to this, and whatever. And you're going to accept this paper. Has any further information on surveys been undertaken since we've talked about this? I would honestly say that a recommendation is to return this DA back to the proposers and have this qualified and seek independent advice as I stated before. It's recognised that council and its councillors scrutinise all development applications it receives, if I'm correct. And that standard should be for all concerned who apply for a development application. As with the flora and fauna, the figures again, I'll state as I said before, no targeted survey, no field survey for aquatic animals, no threatened species found. However, 5 threatened flora, 36 threatened fauna, may be counted. And we say that there's been these qualified people do these things, we don't even know who they are. Has any further information, according to their statement, been gathered on the platypus? I'd say no. Again, reputable and qualified people. The Aboriginal heritage, now that he was to speak tonight, but unfortunately didn't get his consent in early enough to speak. But unfortunately here again, we don't have the same type of knowledge for local input into these inspections. And again, the business paper says, reputable and qualified with no local qualification. Now moved away from that, but onto the road accesses. Due to poor consultation, community members have only come aware of these access roads via the DA that was released. Girraween being the preferred route. Questions are starting to get asked by the wider community now. Is this just for the boreholes or for future use ongoing? Or will Sir Thomas Mitchell Drive be the road, which is in badly need of repair? Statutory content, well, you'll probably watch that one as well, saying they're all being covered. I honestly question whether they have. The stakeholders in regards to consultation, seems to be only a couple of stakeholders that get consulted. One is Aboriginal group, I admit, and council, and that seems to be it. Energy Australia doesn't consult with anybody else in regards to anybody who lives along those access roads and the general community. In summary, if this DA goes through and accepted as such, then what can we imagine future DAs will contain? No community member wants to stop good future projects, providing much needed jobs and economy boost. But this DA and project does not stack up to the standard that we should accept as a community. The public is now talking, and a lot of interest in this scenario is starting to form strong opinions, which puts all participants concerned under scrutiny as to the viability of the project and its long-term consequences. I implore the councillors to use astute judgment and note what the community is evaluating, especially the knowledge of 15 ongoing jobs after construction. And we will also see the demise of other industries and more loss of jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Smith. Could I please ask Anne Pearson to come forward? Thank you.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Anne Pearson. I'm the Head of Reputation at Energy Australia, and I thank you for this opportunity to present to you in support of our application. We are modernising our generation portfolio for a cleaner future and to play our part in reducing greenhouse gas emissions associated with energy production. The most effective way we can do this is through a staged exit from coal and significant investment in new renewable technologies and storage. We acknowledge that this unprecedented level of change has potential to impact communities. The community has already raised important questions around matters such as amenity, design, flora and fauna. We want to understand them and address them to the extent that we can. We will work with stakeholders during planning, design, development and delivery of all of our major new projects. And this will be our approach should the Lake Lyell project proceed. At this point though, we cannot share more than preliminary information as feasibility for the project has not been established. We are doing things one step at a time. We recognise that there are questions and concerns. We have them as well. But until we have data from specialist investigations and proof of what possible impacts may be, we can only convey that this is an early stage project and the planning is ongoing. Engagement activities are already underway. There is a website, fact sheet, Q&As. We've done a letter box drop, advertisements, community briefings and a town hall late last year, and that's just the start. We're also available to council and other stakeholders if there are any questions or concerns at any point. We've already heard some good feedback, but we're also aware that some premature and inaccurate statements have been made as to what this project will or will not involve. This was reflected in comments made to Council last Monday and again this evening. To clarify one point made last week though, we have now formally withdrawn, that is Energy Australia has formally withdrawn any plans for a waste-to-energy facility at the Mount Piper Power Station, and feedback from the community was a big part of this decision. It is our preference to develop clean energy in the regions where we already operate. We want to retain our connections to the Lithgow workforce, suppliers and the broader community that has supported us so well over many years. It also makes good sense to repurpose existing electricity infrastructure where we can. This reduces costs for consumers and conserves resources. Community consultation is a key part of our approach to investigating this pumped hydro project. This is a requirement that we place on ourselves to get the best outcome, and is also a prerequisite to many other planning and approval processes that we will have to go through should we proceed. And we are keen to hear your advice and your advice on ways that we can tailor community involvement and ensure a good understanding of the need for clean energy. We also envisage that there will be an opportunity to work with you all to determine how this project could bring long-term economic and social benefits for the Lithgow region. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Anne Pearson. Could I have Danielle Thompson, please, or Daniel Thompson speak? Thank you.
Good evening all. Not much of a talker, so you just have to bear with me. Just want to say a few words on behalf of the water skiing, camping and fishing community. Every year of my life since I was born, I spent spent Christmas holidays at Lake Lyell. Apart from 1 year, the water was too low to ski on. Our family ended up spending Christmas holidays at Ben Chifley, which straight away means we are supporting Bathurst community and not Lithgow community. Food, shopping, fuel, etc. I would like to see my future kids grow up and have the same experience I had. I don't understand why we are putting one of Lithgow's largest tourist attractions at risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. You did very well. Could I now please have Mr. Ben Lane?
I spoke last meeting about fishing, but there's a few things I want to add to that. Basically, I spoke about Lake Lyell and what it is to the fishing community and how its reputation plays a big part in attracting the 200,000 plus visitors that use the lake each year. What I didn't raise was the DPI invests tens of thousands of dollars each year in stocking the lake. And this money comes from revenue raised by fishing licences, which is purchased by the people. One question is, will the DPI continue this investment if the pumped hydro has a negative effect on the lake? It has been mentioned numerous times, Energy Australia own the lake and the land, but they don't own the water or what lives in it. Now, Energy Australia, they've been a wonderful supporter of the Lithgow community since its beginning. And I believe going ahead with this project will be going against everything they have achieved and done and supported over this period. If this project was going to deliver many permanent jobs for its 80-year lifespan, maybe then it would be worth considering, but the 15 permanent jobs it will create won't match the negative impact it's going to have. I personally would rather see Mount Piper continue for 80 years than this be built. Last meeting, Councillor McGee made the point the pumps will be run by wind and solar. What happens when the pumps are turned on at midnight? There is no wind generation. What runs the pumps? And then last meeting, Councillor Goodwin made a very valid point that by rejecting the boreholes, it would go to the Land Environment Court at a considerable cost to the ratepayers. But if it was to go to the Land Environment Court, the council can choose not to fight it, and I think this would go a lot further with the support of the community, as it shows council is supporting the people that voted them in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Could I now please call on Mr. Stuart Hillen? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Stuart Hillen and I'm the Project Manager responsible for the proposed Lake Lyell Pumped Hydro project. I'd like to use this opportunity to outline our development application a little further and the project a little further and discuss how a full assessment process would work from here. This application to conduct minor geotechnical works is really just the first step of an investigation into whether a pumped hydro project at Lake Lyell is both commercially and technically feasible. There are a few key factors why we want to explore this option. The project's built on land we already own, so there's no need to buy or lease any additional private land for development. The Lake Lyell Dam provides a good source of water for industrial purposes, and Energy Australia already has rights to this water. If constructed, the project will be close to existing high voltage power lines, reducing the need to build additional overhead infrastructure through private property. The distances to tunnel are also relatively short, and the geology of the area promising, attributes that should keep costs down. While these considerations make the potential for pumped hydro at Lake Lyell appealing, the business case for such a development is not yet proven. Geotech investigations provide an understanding of the local geology and help inform the technical feasibility of a pumped hydro facility. Beyond this, a full program of site investigations will be needed to understand the environmental, social, and economic impacts to know if such a project is even feasible. This work is expected to take up to 3 years. And the fact is, even if it is feasible, a potential pumped hydro project at Lake Lyell needs to compete with other projects in New South Wales for government revenue contracts. That means Lake Lyell pumped hydro will only be built if it ends up being one of the most competitive projects in New South Wales, which includes assessing both its value for money and its impact on community. Now, Energy Australia has a history of working collaboratively with the Lithgow Council in providing recreational and tourism benefits for the LGA. We have no interest in changing the positive working relationship which has provided many opportunities for the local community. Lake Lyell is a man-made lake. It was built to support electricity generation activities in the LGA. Ongoing costs to operate and maintain the lake and the existing dam run into the millions of dollars, and they're all paid for by Energy Australia. Repurposing the lake actually presents a really good opportunity. It guarantees the lake future as both an important electricity generation and a community asset. These things can actually coexist. What is very important to note is that this DA is not the only opportunity for Council to influence the pumped hydro project. Council will be consulted throughout the planning and approvals process on how we mitigate any identified impacts of the project. Traffic management and site access is a good example of this. We are already aware of feedback that Girraween Drive not be used for construction access, which we confirm it won't be. The New South Wales planning and approvals process provides a fair and reasonable approach to assessing state significant developments. It provides an opportunity for all matters and concerns by individuals, community groups, regulators and residents to be heard and considered in a thoughtful and structured way. It is my hope that the DA, which has been recommended for approval by Council, can actually proceed to allow better understanding for all interested stakeholders regarding any future development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hillen. Thank you, Mr. Hillen. As Mayor of Lithgow City Council, this is a very tough night for our councillors. We've listened to both for and against tonight, but the most important thing is yet to be said. Before the council moves to debate the item on the business paper, I must highlight to the audience in the gallery that tonight we are not taking any position whatsoever about a future pumped hydro proposal, which may or indeed may not come forward in the future. Councillor Leslie.
This is not on the business paper, what you're saying. That we have one item on the business paper, which is the rescission motion.
Sorry, I didn't do it in my mayoral minute. Sorry, Mayor Leslie, but I was to do that in my mayoral minute.
There was no mayoral minute.
No, there wasn't. I've just made one. Thank you. After listening to both sides of this, I'm entitled to do this. Thank you. I think Councillor Leslie, refrain from speaking. Thank you. We now come to notice of rescission. Notice of rescission, the 1st to the 8th, 2022, DO 07022, Geotechnical Investigation, Works Lake Lyell. Could I have a mover? Thank you. Councillor Bryce, have a seconder? Thank you.
I'll move second it, Mayor Statham.
Thank you, Councillor. Moving the rescission motion.
Is that what you're doing?
Councillor Bryce is moving rescission, is she?
Yeah.
Councillor Bryce, would you please?
No. Yep.
Yes. Would you like to rescind that?
Just withdraw it.
I'll withdraw that. Thank you.
In that case, Mayor Statham, I'll move the rescission motion.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Have a seconder? Thank you.
I will second that, Mayor Statham.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Leslie.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. The background to this extraordinary council meeting is that councillors Coleman, Marty and I put in a rescission motion about the approval for the boreholes. Councillors Bryce and Goodwin put in a request for an extraordinary...
Point of order. I'll accept that immediately because that's incorrect, Councillor Leslie. Point of order, Councillor, your point of order, Councillor Bryce?
It was Councillor O'Connor, not Councillor Goodwin.
That's correct. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies for that. That councillors Bryce and O'Connor put in a request for an extraordinary meeting to discuss the rescission motion urgently, and you set the meeting date for tonight, which was 6 days after that request put in. We also have an unprecedented General Manager's commentary on the rescission motion. But let's talk about the DA 070/22. This had to be one of the easiest DAs for council staff to process. What's difficult about 9 boreholes and a road access? Indeed, had this DA for boreholes been for anywhere else, such as the site of the new Bunnings, it would never have been called in the first place, let alone subjected to a rescission motion. Sure, there were concerns from residents in Girraween Drive about truck movements, but these were easily dismissed. A few boring machines being trucked in once, and then only the occasional light vehicles, is insignificant. The council was not required or allowed to consider the impact of thousands of trucks delivering material to build the dam because it's not the DA. The residents on Magpie Hollow Road are probably completely unaware of any future impact, although I suspect that is about to change. I oppose the DA because it's a confidence trick. The state government has reserved the pumped hydro proposal as the state significant development. This DA should never have been split off from it. Clearly, no dam could be built without a geotechnical investigation of the site being undertaken. It's an integral and essential element of the whole process. There has been no, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's been no separate DA for boreholes at the Bunnings site. But since Bunnings is being built over an old mine, I am confident that such an investigation would be undertaken. Won't it? This is a confidence trick.
Point of order, Councillor Leslie. Could you please explain why you keep bringing up Bunnings? Because Councillor O'Connor has an interest in that, and he hasn't declared that because he didn't know anyone in the world would talk about Bunnings when we're here to talk about the boreholes. So, I don't want to embarrass Councillor O'Connor, but in seriousness, you are embarrassing yourself because this gentleman hasn't had time to declare a conflict of interest. Bunnings has got nothing to do. The people in the audience must be wondering why on earth you would be talking about Bunnings. But of course, it's to get Councillor O'Connor to almost get something, against him because he's going to be the owner of that building. So I think you should just withdraw and refrain from using the word Bunnings unless you were to give Councillor O'Connor immediate information before we came into this meeting. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for that, Mayor Statham. Thank you very much.
Point of order. Point of order, please. A bit of respect.
Sorry, Councillor.
Could you please keep on with your commentary, please? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bryce, but Councillor Leslie will refrain from speaking like that anymore, and also just continue with your commentary. Thank you.
The Bunnings is merely an example of another development.
Second warning, Councillor Leslie. Your third warning, you'll be asked to leave the chambers. Thank you. We are not biting tonight. We are running a council meeting, not a circus. And you are out of order for the third time. So please refrain, or would you like to leave the chambers now? Then there'll be one less person voting and the people in the audience will be distracted and they will be disgusted with you because your next time you use it, you'll be leaving the chambers and not voting. People in the audience can think if I'm tough, that's why I've got this job. And on nights like tonight, we don't need a childish councillor embarrassing you people that are there to count on his vote. So I refrain from doing this and have never had the opportunity to do this before, but this is your third warning now. So this, if you continue to use the word Bunnings, Councillor O'Connell will have to leave the chambers. Is that why you're doing this, Councillor Leslie?
I'm afraid to answer the questions without using the forbidden word, so
Thank you.
Again, point of order, bit of respect. You're making a mockery of this,
You're just bringing the council down as well as yourself, Councillor Leslie, but we're quite used to it now.
if Councillor Bryce would allow me, I would like to continue. Thank you. I'll start. This is a conference trick because the New South Wales government wants this seemingly minor matter of a few boreholes to be carried by Lithgow Council. They may not have expected it to be debated. They probably expected it to be dealt with under delegated authority. Fortunately, 3 councillors thought this matter was of sufficient interest to the community, and the very fact that we have as many people in the gallery 2 Monday nights in a row, I think will demonstrate that it was right to bring it to the council. This is yet another example of this government's cost shifting, only this time it is not economics.
Councillor Leslie,
reputation.
we're not here to do a grandstanding of the coming elections or champion the cause of any political party. We're here tonight to discuss a very, very important issue. Please keep on track. I ask you to refrain from talking about the government. We are here tonight to talk. These poor people in the audience have come here nervous, anxious, and they want a result. They need to get you to stay in the chambers. Now I'm asking you, I've had complaints from people all week about you running down the government. We're not here to discuss anything to do with governments. We're here to discuss the boreholes tonight that Energy Australia have put in a DA for. Please continue.
The state government should have dealt with this matter themselves.
No wonder Mr. Smith's scratching his head. Complete your commentary, please.
The DA, I'll wait for the little machine because it keeps, when I get the machine this way, I will continue. Thank you. The DA for the boreholes is an issue that should never have come to council. It's easy for the council to get a recommendation to carry it, and it's difficult for councillors to speak against it because the motion is so trivial. However, the consequences of this very trivial motion is that an iconic development in our area, Lake Lyell, and Mount Walker behind it, will be destroyed forever. We can all pretend that we're just dealing with a DA for boreholes, but we all know that's not true. I recommend that the motion should be rescinded.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. I'll first by stating that I appreciate Energy Australia sending a letter regarding this particular DA. I'm not the only councillor, I believe, received it, and I'd like to thank those from Energy Australia speaking tonight. And they have acknowledged that this is a topic of public interest. What I like about the letter that was sent to me, that it mentions that the outcome of the report in regards to the geotechnical investigation Consultation will be considered extensive and feedback will be used to shape the final plans, including how we can ensure the community benefits from the project, which was stated earlier tonight from the lady that came from Energy Australia. However, as a community councillor, I pride myself on listening to the wider community. I understand that if this DA is rejected by council, it would possibly go to the Land Environment Court. However, council can choose not to defend this in the Land Environment Court, as mentioned by Mr. White. I personally cannot stand on a platform of your voice and then not listen to the community I represent, respect and love. My position is clear and I won't change. I supported the rescission motion because credibility is everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against this tonight? Thank you.
I'll speak briefly to it, Mayor Stave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Like Councillor Coleman, I thank the representatives from Energy Australia and I thank them throughout the process for bringing their information forward and appreciate the recent letter with additional information. Stuart spoke at the end about this being a first step to assess the development of a future project. What I'm hearing, and I thank the community members for coming in and speaking tonight, and I particularly extend my thanks to Daniel. It can be quite a nervous thing stepping up in front of your community on behalf of your community, so thank you for doing that. What the community's spoken to me about is primary constraints, not the boreholes, not whether the geology's right. They've spoken to me about primary constraints that are really not acceptable for this community. The 2 metre water drop and the impacts that has on a significant recreational activity, the 10 metres of mud flats, which then starts to compromise the significant tourism opportunity we have here. Obviously the fishers and the water recreation people, it's a big place. At Christmas it's a big place through the summer holidays. And it's important, the secondary employment that brings. A number of the speakers spoke about the 15 jobs. Whilst I'll always advocate for any single job, if this puts at risk other tourism jobs and other economic activity in our town, I'm not sure I can support it. Mr. White spoke to listening to higher order experts. And as I said last week, last meeting, I hope my comments don't become a personal opinion piece. I try and spend as much time as I can listening to people and trying to judge things on the merit. If we make a decision based on merit and the proponent decides to take it to the Land Environment Court, I'll live with that because I believe we've made a merit-based decision. But Mr. White spoke to our independent specialist, Professor Andrew Blakers, who've looked and done extensive studies and identified 2,000 sites. Now, when I was getting my score reports, I was sort of hoping they'd certainly be above D, somewhere hopefully Class A, but apparently this one didn't even rate on the report card. So I'm questioning whether this DA hasn't looked closely enough at the primary constraints, the impact on Mount Walker and the dam construction. I probably would like to ask a question, if I could, through the Mayor to staff. I'm concerned at the participation of Aboriginal voices in our decision making. Now, can I clarify, was there a speaker that requested to speak tonight?
Mr. McGrath.
Thanks, Mayor Statham. Yes, there was.
And was permission granted for that?
It came in too late, I'm afraid.
Okay, whilst I understand policies and the importance of procedure,
this is a very short turnaround time for a meeting. It's not in our scheduled meeting for the year. I found out about it probably later than most councillors, and I'm involved in it. I've got to turn up for the show. So for people who are sitting in the community, their opportunity to see these things are not as prominent as it is to us. So I need to hear these voices in this conversation, and I've been concerned about a number of major projects where I'm not seeing that adequately represented. So with what I've said, I'm sorry that I cannot change my position on where I arrived at last meeting, and I'll be supporting the rescission motion.
Councillor Marnie, thank you. I'd just like the General Manager to address the meeting tonight just before we take any further matters. Thank you.
I think the question from the Mayor goes to the comment Councillor Marnie just made about the inability of that person to address the Council this evening. An extraordinary meeting needs to be held within 14 days of being called, and so this was the appropriate opportunity given other commitments. I also acknowledge that we had 7 speakers for this item, and I also acknowledge that we've got extensive Indigenous engagement procedures and consultation, and the report speaks to that. And I need water, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. There'll be just a brief pause. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against that? Thank you. Councillor Goodsell.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. Sorry, excuse me. I also understand, again, that I stated last week that this development application is only regarding the boreholes to be drilled to enable Energy Australia to determine if the pumped hydro project is feasible or not. And I also thank Energy Australia for presenting today their contributions to the community over the years, and a personal phone call from Mick Handley, which I appreciated. Energy Australia has put out a lot of information regarding the geotechnical investigation works, but in addition to that, they've also put out public information on the proposed pumped hydro project. That may go ahead, and what that may look like, and that I don't understand why that information was put out if the geotechnical surveys have to be done to establish whether it's feasible or not. They're very strong facts, and quite rightly the community has taken this information on the proposed pumped hydro project and the information Energy Australia provided to gain an understanding of what this may look like for our community. And I'm still unable to discount the link between the two. Energy Australia have publicised the following preliminary information so far. The site could accommodate a facility to produce up to 335 megawatts of electricity to power 150 households. Initial estimates suggest the water level at Lake Lyell may fluctuate between 1 and 2 metres daily, pumping from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. during summer. The current concept design for the upper reservoir has a volume of 4.4 gigalitres, around 1/10 of the size of Lake Lyell will be stored on Mount Walker. The wall height of the current concept is 40 metres. There will be an exclusion zone within which will exclude access for the public on land or water, and it won't be permitted to access for safety reasons. So they've provided us this information. I don't know how I can't consider it as it's been stated. 34 gigalitres out of Lake Lyell Dam and 4.4 gigalitres of the dam, which equates to 12, nearly 13% of Lake Lyell, is proposed to be stored on top of Mount Walker daily. If this is approved and moves forward, which I don't support, and the project is deemed feasible, I do hope the following from Energy Australia is true, which they've stated: we know that Lake Lyell is a popular recreational location for the local community, so we're looking at ways to minimise environmental and social impacts as we refine the project design. We are also consulting with the community to understand the views on the project. Ultimately, any project we do must be good for the environment and good for people. I do support clean energy, and once again I support Energy Australia in its contribution to our community thus far, but my position has not changed and I do not support this development application. I'll be voting for the rescission motion.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Yep, I want to speak against the motion. I've read the original report and it addresses Getaween Drive, the bridge off the Great Western, no weight limit, increased traffic. It's only going to be one truck go in, then it's four-wheel drives or whatever. It'll the truck finish and go out. So there's no big trucks going in, going out while it goes on. And I can see this plan, why it could be turned down. Because there'll be no developer come to Litco without certainty if they get something approved and it's called in and it's people just won't invest here. And this business, if it does go ahead, that 15 jobs, what about the construction? 700 or 800 jobs maybe for 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 years. Nobody mentions that. So I'm more than happy to go the way I went before. And that is support the DA that was put in to drill the boreholes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Marnie? Sorry, Councillor.
We look alike. Okay, I support the original DA. It is on. Oh, sorry. Anything else? I read the reports. I read the original Aboriginal Heritage report. I read the original Flora and Fauna report. They were well written. Of the ones that I've seen, it was well written compared to those. This is only the holes. Just because I'm supporting the drilling of the holes doesn't mean I'm supporting the pump hydro. I haven't seen the what is going to come out of all this, and until then I reserve my judgment on that, and I have a right to do that. But what we're looking at in front of us is the DAs for drilling holes, and that's what I'm supporting today.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Leslie, right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Herron, at Public Forum, was hoping to hear from councillors as to why they would want to support this project. I hope he's happy with the answers he's got, although I suspect not. If Lithgow Council refuses this DA, it will never go to the Land and Environment Court. That seems contrary to what everyone else is saying. It will simply be bundled into the state significant DA for the pumped hydro. It should have been there in the first place, and we as a council rejects it. They will just bundle it all up and deal with the whole thing is one brand new state significant development which will include the boreholes and the road access. The government and or Energy Australia will not take the risk of a Land and Environment Court hearing. It's a court, has an independent view. They're not subject to government policies. They're not subject to anyone else's telling them what to do. They listen to the issues before them, and they'll make up their own decision on it. And but the government, however, has a different view on that, and they won't send it there. So, taking a principled stand and forcing the government to do its own dirty work will cost this council nothing, but it will help restore its integrity and standing in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. I'll put the motion, please. I'm sorry, we're not allowed to take any more speakers from the gallery. I realise you may have some answers for Councillor Leslie. You might discuss those with Councillor Leslie after the meeting. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against say aye. And for the record, this is not a casting vote that I've just done. It was misread and spoken on the news last week. I've had many people tell me that, so my vote, it's a 5-4 vote tonight. Thank you.
I'd like to have a division on this. Thank you.
Of course, there'll be a division on this. The motion is lost, and I will call a division on this. All those in favour say aye. Councillor Coleman, Councillor Leslie, Councillor Marnie and Councillor Goodsell. Against? Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Bryce, Councillor Goodwin, Councillor McGee and Councillor Statham. Thank you all. Thank you tonight. We go into matters of great urgency now. There is a matter of great urgency tonight. Does anybody else have a matter of great urgency tonight? Councillor Leslie, you have yet again for the position of the Mayor. Your unprofessionally premeditated displays as a current Lithgow City Council elected councillor was nothing less than disgraceful, humiliating and childish last Monday, the 25th of July, at the monthly public council meeting. I've had many people complain about what you have done. I did not see it myself. You chose to turn on your microphone, and tonight you showed that you love people looking at you in that microphone, knowing the live stream of order. Councillor Leslie spoke 3 times to turn the microphone around tonight. Councillor Goodsell, I won't accept your point of order. Excuse me. You chose to turn on your microphone.
Sorry, Mayor Statham. I'd like to move a motion of dissent. I think Councillor Leslie is entitled, just like I am, to have the camera on him when he speaks.
I fully agree. Thank you. You then pushed back your chair from the view to display a poster you had obviously written and printed prior to the council meeting. This was the matter of great urgency Councillor Goodwin brought up, and I congratulate Councillor Goodwin for bringing that up. The accusations you made regarding me were totally incorrect, premeditated, and most importantly, untrue. I raise this matter with you tonight as members of the public viewing, watching live streaming and paying rates are disgusted at your ongoing childish behaviour. I'm asking you to apologise to me this evening, also the public gallery and the public watching live streaming tonight, Councillor Leslie.
Certainly, Madam Mayor. I apologise for my actions at the council meeting last week, and it was inappropriate and it won't happen again.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Thank you all for attending tonight. We do appreciate it, and thank you.